And blessed to be part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. Joined now by Dr. Tommy Ahlquist. Dr. Ahlquist, thank you for joining us, sir.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Not bad. How is life on the trail?
Great. We're in Burley already this morning. Not really early, but it's going very, very well. We have a packed day that ends at about 10:30 tonight, so it's going great. We're just working hard.
Indeed. Certainly the sacrifice has got to be tough for you. Have you? I know you like the Diet Cokes on the trail.
Hey, I do like Diet Cokes, and this morning when we pulled into the gas station, Jackson's, our favorite place, there's these new Diet flavors that we're going to try out today. So we're pretty excited on the road today, Kevin.
Well, sometimes people, I think, are more likely to talk about that than other issues pressing us here in the state of Idaho. Let's take a look at your thoughts, sir, lately on what's going on in the legislature. You've got the Castle Doctrine going through. You've got other issues that are getting a lot of headlines. But I know you're going to be at the Second Amendment Forum by the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. So let's start with your stance on the Second Amendment.
Strong supporter of the legislation that's going through. I think that I think that we in Idaho, with our values and our conservative nature, we need to be at the forefront of the Second Amendment. And I think if you look at our safety and you look at what we enjoy here, it is because of our strong stance on the Second Amendment, and we just need to continue to support that in every way possible.
Indeed, it's strange in the world that we live in today, considering the Bill of Rights has been there forever, that the Second Amendment would be an issue.
It is strange, and again, I think every time something happens, instead of talking about what we should be talking about, which is mental health, it immediately goes to blaming guns. And so I think that as governor and again in Idaho, we need to lead on this issue, and so very, very supportive.
You know, Dr. Ahlquist, when you mention mental health, you as a physician have a unique insight into this, because when you talk to most law enforcement folks, they say many of the issues that they face that are challenged by is the idea of a lack of mental health facilities and care. If elected, is there anything that the governor or the state legislature can do?
Absolutely, Kevin. In fact, when you talk to our good law enforcement, here's guys that get trained to defend and protect us and serve, and yet they become our de facto social workers, and they get put in these situations where they're taken out of their roles and providing services that should not be provided by them. They should be able to do their job, and we need mental health on the other side to do the job of taking care of these people when they're in crisis. I talked to one of my partners from the ER a few weeks ago, and they said they had 35 mental holds in one weekend in Boise. 35. Each one of those mental holds sucks all those resources. And if we do, and this is what we'll do, Kevin, we're going to do things with data, but if we analyze what we're spending right now ineffectively to take care of these cases and putting our officers where they shouldn't be, and we look at if we invest the money on the front end, what we're going to save on the back end, we need it desperately. If you look at where we are, we're top 5 for suicide. You look at the drug abuse and rehab support we have, mental health issues. That's where we need to put some of this time and resources. I can't wait, though, Kevin, to look through the health and welfare budget of the state of Idaho, because I'm just digging into that now. I think I've told you before, we're digging into every department of state government and writing a business plan for it and asking the question of how is this department investing in Idaho, not just spending our money, because that's the problem with government. Government just spends our money, and it's built to grow and spend and spend and spend. Well, let's dig into health and welfare, see how we're spending that money right now and how we might invest that money better. And as we do that, hopefully we can find some of the resources that are already there. We can reallocate into where it needs to be, which is mental health in the state of Idaho. But it's desperately needed. Too little, too late. We need to get in there and help this crisis that's going on in the state, and we'll do that.
Dr. Tommy Ahlquist with us, Kevin Miller in the morning. He's on the trail. We're here at KIDO Talk Radio. Speaking of government spending money, your thoughts on the HP acquisition?
So I'm probably a little close to this, Kevin. As a commercial developer, I don't think I've ever reported this to anyone, but we actually put a bid in on that campus. My company wanted to buy it. We actually formally submitted a bid to buy the HP campus, and then the state came in and bought it for $35 million more than we would have paid for it as a private industry. $35 $35 million more, Kevin. And they underestimated, I think, by about half of what they're going to have to sink into it to remodel it. So I think it's a very good idea that they're going to own their own real estate instead of leasing forever. I think that's a fundamental sound principle. But I think it's a great example of how it was overpaid for, and with really no transparency. I don't know if you saw anything, but there was no discussion. They went out and bonded for the campus. The numbers that I've seen, and this is my business, they overpaid for it. And then the only other thing I'll tell you, Kevin, so listen to your show, is my goodness, I cannot stand the landscaping out front, and hopefully they at least fix that, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir. You know, but you've studied this campus, and as you've accurately pointed out, and you would know, I mean, these buildings have to get up to code, so that's going to be a lot of money that are going to come from the taxpayers.
Yeah, I mean, the tenant improvement cost is going to be millions of dollars. Now, for a private developer, too, it came with a couple of other parcels that are undeveloped. So you could see a pro forma where it made sense, where over years you filled it up and you developed those parcels. But as the state doing it, again, I just think we overpaid for it without any transparency. Just another example, Kevin, of when we come in, we will do everything. And I know this might sound easy on the outside, but in the real world, you have transparency and excellence. And we need more transparency in the state. It's actually embarrassing sometimes, the lack of transparency we have to taxpayers that are footing the bill for all this stuff that goes on. And we need to stop it.
Dr. Tommy Ahlquist with us here at KIDO Talk Radio. We come to that and the idea of transparency. Okay, we've got the HP purchase, and like you said, it just went through. Nobody approved it. We had legislators that didn't even know about it until they came back. So how do you do that? Everybody promises to be transparent. And if you had any other examples of where the state has failed to be transparent with other things, sir?
Oh, absolutely. I think you look at the IEN that kind of fell through and the money that was lost there. You look at different systems that have been bought by the state to implement that then don't work, and millions of dollars that are not transparent. And I think this latest healthcare thing, I think that this latest stunt, I've called it, by Governor Otter and Brad Little on this dual-signed. So they dual-sign an executive order, first time ever since they've been in as a political stunt, months before a primary election. I don't think they went about this right, and it's actually going to increase cost to people because of the way they went about it. It makes no sense how they went about this in a mid-year with the insurance companies, and I hope people start asking the questions. One of the frustrations for me is it seems like no one's even asking the right questions of why did you do it now, what was the process, and what's it going to actually do to cost it in Idaho. Now, I'm the first. In fact, I've been talking on the campaign trail for a year. We need to get more flexibility back in the insurance industry. But there's ways you go about that without doing a backroom political stunt like this. So there's lots of examples. I think we absolutely need financial disclosures. I think we need term limits. And Kevin, the reason for term limits is this. If you're there too long, you stop paying attention to the budget. You fall into this trap of spending taxpayer dollars instead of investing it. And we need transparency and term limits in our state elected positions because it's healthy. It's healthy to have that turnover. And I just think there's lots of examples, and hopefully a lot of those will come out here as we go down the stretch.
Let's talk about the need, Dr. Ahlquist, for term limits. At one time, that was the law here in Idaho. That's been overturned. Your thoughts on term limits? I know you were at the forefront of this.
Yeah, so I think there's an excellent if you Google term limit review by the law school in University of Idaho. They did a great job a few years ago. Bart Davis wrote an article on this, but the voters overwhelmingly approved term limits in the state of Idaho. That was turned over by the legislature, then vetoed, and then ultimately turned over again. So though they went away. The problem the first time through is those term limits went all the way down to local positions, right? It's hard enough to get local leaders to serve. And I argue that our state legislature actually has some pretty good turnover, and they're part-time positions. But my goodness, for state elected positions, if we want to get away from some of this cronyism that happens every single session and every year in the state of Idaho, we need turnover. So for state elected positions, 8 years is a long time. If I can't get in and get some stuff done immediately and serve the people and then get out, I'm not the right guy and no one else should be. And if you don't do that, there's just too many of these relationships that happen. There's too much behind-the-scenes stuff that happens with these special interest groups. And who's forgotten in that? The joke is on taxpayers and the people of Idaho.
Now, Dr. Ahlquist, we've got a couple calls. I know you're busy, so one more question from me, and then we'll get to your friends Pro-Life and Tea Party Bob. While the phone continues to go, I know sometimes the cell service can be bad. You are reaching out to young Republicans, young conservatives, and you've got some pretty big folks coming in that's getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah, this should get a lot of buzz. You know, one of the things that's happening around America is we're getting away, Kevin, from the things that made us great, right? Being able to talk about our belief in a higher power in God, being able to talk about capitalism and hard work and free markets and the freedoms that we enjoy. And it's almost like when you say those things now, you worry about being able to say those. And there's a young man, his name's Charlie Kirk, from Illinois, who woke up when he was 18 years old and said, I'm going to make a difference in the world. And he started a group called Turning Point USA, and they are changing things for millennials and for the youth in America. He's now 23 years old. Last year, they were able to elect a majority of conservatives as student body presidents in campuses around the nation. Their organization is incredible. I went back to their Student Action Summit in Florida a couple of months ago and was blown away. 3,400 kids, college students from all around the country. Kevin, they're making conservative cool again. And in an era where we had it jammed down our throat by first Barack Obama and then now Bernie Sanders with all this socialism garbage, we have someone, Charlie Kirk, very, very articulate, and Candace Owens, who's there with him, and they're going around the country and teaching our kids and reminding our kids what's made us great as a nation. And they'll be here in Boise next Monday. We'll have a rally over at Boise State University at 4:30, and then the next day we're going to go over to eastern Idaho and go to Idaho State University and BYU, Idaho. But the whole message is teaching our kids and our youth and our millennials that it is conservative principles that have made us great as a country. I can't wait to bring them here. I'm very honored that they're here. And anyone that listens to Charlie and Candace will be blown away by the way they are able to articulate this message to our youth. They connect with them, and it's so refreshing. And they're up against George Soros and, $14 billion that invades our college systems around America, teaching people that we should have a single-payer system in healthcare, and socialism is where we need to go. Socialism destroys countries. We know that. And when America goes around the world and lifts people out of poverty, what do we teach? We teach capitalism. We don't teach socialism. Socialism destroys, and that's their message, and I can't wait to bring them to Idaho.
Quickly to Pro-Life for Dr. Ahlquist at KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Pro-Life.
Yeah, some of the big conflicts we have are constitutionally about jurisdiction between federal and state. And I'm going to ask you a question. Say like in our state constitution, it says that marriage is only one man and one woman. But then the Supreme Court overrules that. Now, I've had a lot of discussions with Governor Otter saying that, listen, all we need to do is just enforce our state constitution and ignore the federal government. And I think that's what the people of Idaho would like you to do, something like that. Now, on those kind of questions, would you be willing, as the governor, to defy a federal court when it conflicts with the morals and the the Constitution of Idaho?
Now, wait a minute. Also, Pro-Life, you need to, and by the way, Pro-Life, thank you for the call. You need to out yourself because you're going to be contending for the governorship. I just signed your petition the other day to get you on the ballot. Dr. Ahlquist, your thoughts on Pro-Life?
Running for governor?
He's back at it, yes, sir.
He's back at it. Well, we'll welcome him to the race. It's crowded already, but I think it just brings up more issues that we can talk about. Back on pushing back on the federal government, I think that the key word here, Kevin, is viable option. I think we need to stand up as a state absolutely to the federal government anytime we can, especially on moral issues. Absolutely. But we also need to be smart about when we get into those lawsuits because we don't have unlimited resources, and I want to make sure that we're not spending too much money or money where there's not a viable end in sight for fighting back. So each case will be taken differently. It depends on the issue, and it depends on that path forward, if it's viable. But if it is, yes, absolutely, we need to fight back. And a lot of times that will mean getting into some lawsuits to make that happen. But we got to be smart about it. We got to do what you do in business. you don't go after something if you're going to throw money at it without having an end in sight or a goal. But if it's viable, absolutely.
And quickly, to the publisher of the Gem State Patriot, Tea Party Bob, for Dr. Ahlquist on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Dr. Ahlquist. Good morning, Kevin. A couple of very quick ones here. Where does the governor get the power to commandeer $28.8 million out of the general fund and the millennial fund and move 3,500 chronically ill people to the Medicaid system? Isn't all he's doing is filling the coffers of the insurance companies by easing their cost burden? The second part is you talked about the opioid problem and the use of it for chronic pain, but you never said how you're going to solve the problem. Would you consider integrative medicine, which is a proven method of dealing with chronic pain, and would you consider bringing a real integrative process into play in our medical system using chiropractors, massage therapists, and complementary and alternative methods?
So, Bob, yes, absolutely. So the first thing is, I hope that the media and the people of Idaho look through the smoke and mirrors of what's going on with these healthcare proposals right now. We have got to stop in Idaho, and we can lead in Idaho on this, continuing to fuel the beast. If you look at healthcare dollars, 25 cents on every dollar goes back to pay healthcare. 75 cents on every dollar fuels this monster that has an insatiable appetite that will consume every dollar that's thrown at it. So every time we expand Medicaid and make Medicaid, that's the whole thing. Medicaid for everyone. No, let's stop in Idaho and say, let's contain costs. Let's provide cost-effective care and actually deliver cost to the people of Idaho for what it costs instead of the pricing of medicine. And if we start having those discussions, and Kevin, we could talk about this for an hour, but there are things we can do immediately in Idaho to reduce the cost, increase transparency and competition in the marketplace that will save our system. And then, Bob, secondly, yes, absolutely. We need to look at alternative therapies for pain management, which absolutely work. I know they work. I've seen them work, and we need to have those available. And the discrimination against those alternative therapies in the healthcare industry has financial reasons behind it, and we need to fix that so that people have options. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Ahlquist, we appreciate it. If people want more information about your campaign and this big event coming up next week, what can they do?
So TommyForIdaho.com, and then on our Facebook page, we have all the times and locations of where Charlie and Candace will be around Idaho next week. And thanks again, Kevin, for having me on. It's always nice to be with you.
Well, I appreciate it. It's tough for me to hear when you're talking about the, conservatives being cool and these young folks. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when we were young.
Yeah, it's getting longer and longer, Kevin. I turned 50 last week. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I actually think I feel a little worse on the treadmill in the morning now. I think it's hitting me. So it's been a while, buddy.
Take care, sir. Thank you.
All right. See you.
Bye-bye. All right. Dr. Ahlquist joining us. Your thoughts next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Do appreciate Dr. Ahlquist for calling in. Of course, we're home to all the candidates and the campaigns at 580-5436, Congressman Labrador, Lieutenant Governor Little, Steve Pankey, who is running. We haven't really heard much from him, but he's welcome to call in as well. And, of course, all the candidates for Congress, Lieutenant Governor, and the like. Certainly we want to make sure that you get access, unbiased, objective access to these candidates because we have such important decisions coming up here at the 2018 primary, along with coverage of the legislature. I do like the idea of bringing back term limits for state officials. I think we should do that for federal officials, but we can get into that. KIDO Talk Radio time is 8:26. Time for and Larry. We do appreciate that. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And coming up between, I think, now and 9 o'clock, because this is just a topic that we can never get enough of. Oh, what those crazy Californians are up to now.
San Francisco's Attorney General says they'll either wipe out or reduce criminal convictions for marijuana dating back decades. A 2016 ballot measure legalized recreational pot sales and also allowed people convicted on those charges to petition courts to toss out old cases. Recreational marijuana became legal in California last year, and on January 1st, it became legal for licensed dispensaries to sell it to non-medical patients. Earlier this year, the Justice Department said it will stop an Obama-era policy to take a more hands-off approach to states that have legalized pot because it's still illegal under federal law. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
When are the pro-pot folks ever going to get it? that the law is the law is the law, and the idea of throwing out pot convictions. Now, the federal government can solve this problem very simply and not being afraid of going to court, not being afraid of anything, and saying, okay, California, no more federal money for this, this, and this. You want to be a sanctuary state? You want to be a drug haven? Go ahead. It's going to cost you. Kind of like, I'm trying to think of a great analogy for it, at work or somewhere else. You pay a fine. You don't want to bring back the library book on time? You pay a fine. And we're going to keep charging you again and again and again. Whether it's Governor Moonbeam, whether it's anything else. And no wonder so many people are coming to Idaho. We're blessed to have them. It's great. Of course, now we've got to deal with the infrastructure. And my dad, who just got in town, goes, dude, you're getting surrounded by people. And we live in Star. Imagine what's going on. You don't have to imagine if you live in Nampa, Meridian, Cuna, Caldwell, and the like. People are just leaving, and they should. Anarchy doesn't prevail, but it might in California. We might just have to write them off. The idea of throwing out criminal convictions? We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, Tanya J. Powers will join us. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good.
And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning. Tanya J. Powers joining us now, and I will try not to tip my southern bias here, considering I live in the West and Tanya J. Powers is an East Coast person now, but this is a pretty cool. Well, I mean, hey, we all have to leave the nest, apparently.
Well, not necessarily, but yeah, I mean, we did.
Yeah. You left the beloved South. I was forced out, but that's another story.
Wow. That is not where I thought this was going. I'll just be really honest with you.
I'm glad at least you had a plan for this as opposed to me. So I love this story. Super Bowl fans should stand for the anthem wherever they are, according to the governor of South Carolina. One of the most conservative state in the union, South Carolina, Alabama, or Mississippi, I guess, in your experience, if we were saying like socially conservative, where would you go with that?
Oh, wow. Socially conservative? I don't know. I mean, I'm from Mississippi, so I can speak to that with, some authority. I'd have to pick that, but I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong.
Well, that's a tough call. I don't know if, you've got some, they call Idaho the reddest of the red. You've got Utah. Usually does very well, usually top one or two when it comes to conservative states. But I don't think you'd have anyone else in the country that's an elected governor say that they should stand for the national anthem. Maybe they should, but what do you make of this story?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, as you mentioned, the proclamation came from the governor, Henry McMaster, who said that, he's proclaiming this week, stand for the flag Super Bowl Sunday in South Carolina, and says that no matter where you are, even if you're just in your own living room, stand up, when the anthem is played for the Super Bowl. Now, keep in mind a couple of things. I mean, South Carolina has a large military presence, and it's home to, according to the Post and Courier, some 417,000 veterans. So, there's a lot of reasons he's saying this. Obviously, he's promoting the fact that he believes people should stand during the anthem no matter where they are. And he says, he asks the people of South Carolina to show the world the state's commitment to supporting the troops. That's one of the reasons he says to do this. Of course, as this is in opposition of the kneeling that has been the kneeling and protest during the anthem that we've seen take place in the NFL. Two things to remember. One, like I said, first of all, South Carolina has a large military presence and a lot of veterans. Second of all, this is an election year, and he is one of 4 GOP candidates who is running. And remember, he was not elected the first time. He is the person who was put in who became governor after Nikki Haley became the UN ambassador. So do the two have anything in common? I will let you make that distinction, but I'm just pointing out, this is what's going on. This is the political landscape in South Carolina.
Let's see. Ooh, our time is up because I had something good, but it'll have to wait till next time.
Well, see, you'll just have to book me again. We'll have to chat again soon.
Booker Dano. Okay.
There you go.
Have a great day. Our great friend Tanya J. Powers here. Let's go to Jim in Meridian with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Jim.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Appreciate all you do for the listening audience. It's a great public service.
Thank you. Blessed to be here.
If I could comment quickly on our local TV news stations last night. I mean, they constantly rile you up with their distortions sometimes in their reporting. I don't really believe we have any real journalists anymore. It's hard to find them in the country. But a couple stations, I think it was 7 and 6 or Channel 7 and 2, did a story on teaching green card holders in Caldwell and Canyon County, classes and a program for green card holders. And that's great. I'm all for green card holders learning about American history and continuing on, their development into U.S. citizens if that's what they want to be and that's their direction. But what they threw out in the story was that the IRC, the little organization in Boise, well, it's not that little, the IRC and the Catholic Charities were nonprofit organizations. And the reporter just kept saying over and over through the story, it must have been 15 times, nonprofit organization, put on by nonprofit organization. Well, those organizations are getting millions of dollars from the U.S. taxpayers. You know, these classes in Canyon County, they're not being run through altruism or out of the goodness of somebody's heart. And I'm sure if the reporter had just scratched barely below the surface, they would have found they're being paid to run those classes. And those organizations, yeah, they're nonprofits. They're registered as nonprofits, but that doesn't mean they're not getting millions of dollars from the Treasury and from U.S. taxpayers. Every voter and your listeners can email or write or call those agencies and request their yearly annual report. They're required to give it to you by the Internal Revenue Service rules because they're registered as nonprofits. They're required to give you their annual report, and any listener can look at exactly where their money is coming from. And a big chunk of it, it's not coming from passing the church plate around or donations or, we don't see them doing bake sales around here and fundraisers. It's coming from U.S. taxpayers and the U.S. Treasury. And that just galls me that these reporters, apparently they don't know about this. They didn't ask. They didn't check anybody. They just do this story and toss out 15 times nonprofit organization like it's just this fluffy, wonderful free. It's a free lunch, free for all for everybody. And it's not.
Well, it's not. And Jim, here's the other point. And really, no one will cover this, and this has been going on for years. But you go to the emergency rooms, you see folks without the insurance that are not citizens. You go to some of the school districts. You have people here that are, I don't know. I always thought that to go to a school you had to live in a district, but you have people that are here illegally. I've had people come up to me and say, well, we're worried about, they live in fear. I go, fear of what? We don't enforce our immigration laws. And, when you have classrooms that are overfilling, when you have, bills that don't get paid, the rest of us foot the bill.
Right.
And that's what the businesses love because we subsidize health care and education for their cheap labor.
Yes. This IRC in Boise and the Catholic Charities are deeply into the refugee racket. They get millions of dollars to bring in these refugees and give them a car voucher to buy a car. They get a free apartment, of course. They immediately get on food stamps. They get more than any American citizen gets as help. And then they do that for a year or 2 years or whatever their program is that they're getting in all these millions of dollars. It's a racket. And then they just cut them off. They don't support them at all after that. They just cut them off and turn them loose into the community. So it's a racket, and I can't imagine why the Idaho congressmen have not worked to cut off this money. With a country with a $20 trillion national debt, we don't need to be spending billions. It's in the billions every year on freebies, giving out freebies, free lunches for so-called refugees. It's a racket.
Exactly. And here's the deal. Look, I'll out myself. I'm a Catholic. I go to church. I disagree with my church sometimes. When they
that's okay.
Exactly. When it comes to this, and Catholic Charities does a lot of good work, but they are involved in this. And
yes.
I've had people come up to me that manage rental properties and say, you would not believe the stuff that's going on. And you never hear that. You hear about the refugees, and they're here, but they don't come here for free. Now, you and I lose our jobs. We're out on the street. We're at the Boise Rescue Mission. These folks come here, and they get subsidized, and there is no incentive for them to work.
Absolutely. So back to this story, I wish we could get accurate reporting, and it wouldn't take much digging deeper to get these kind of facts into a news story like that. The green card holders, they ought to pay for their own American history classes, not indirectly through the taxpayers. It's kind of a subversive way to do it is what's going on. Anyway, I appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. And that's one thing, we did have a lot of people, a lot of sob stories that came out of President Trump being elected because the spigot has been cut off, or maybe it hasn't. I go back to a person that got me involved in what we do today. People talk about who had a great influence on you. Well, the stock answer is Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan did. But for me, my hero has always been Patrick J. Buchanan. And he's a writer, he's a commentator, he used to be a television personality until MSNBC kicked him off. Sean has him on quite a bit. And Pat Buchanan is just a brilliant writer, says things that are unpopular, but you need to say those things. I mean, he's been called every name in the book. Now, we've had him on the show, over the years. Last time I saw him, I think it was 2 years ago in Washington with his beautiful wife, Shelley. And Pat Buchanan always said, we never voted, the country never voted for the Immigration Reform Act of 65 that discriminated people coming from Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and gave preference to people coming from the third world. Remember, Kennedy's quote is, "We will not be flooded by refugees and immigrants from undeveloped countries." Well, you can figure out if that's the case. And then you take a look at what Obama did, and you see it in the city of Boise. You see it elsewhere, where you have people from other parts of the world just plopped here. Nobody voted on that, did they? Now, we're a country of, compassion and everything else, but when you have Americans, and by the way, let me just say this, and I've been meaning to share this with you. It seems to me that working 2 jobs is the norm these days. It hit me the other day, and I think I'm going to get a second job. Just so I need the money. We all need the money. I had a couple people come up to me and say, well, I'm going to come to the birthday party December 10th at Dave & Buster's. I'm going to take off my work from my second job to do it. And then and this is a person we love, and, you'd know them. They're not ashamed of it. They're a hard worker. They've served our country. Then I had another young lady come up to me. I'm just sitting there hanging out afterwards, making sure that Mrs. Miller's to-go order was good to go. Young person, works 2 jobs, conservative, listens to KIDO Talk Radio, and I go, my goodness gracious. We've got Americans, Idahoans, young and old, working more and getting paid less. That was the norm under Obama. And you take a look at the business, you take a look at money flowing back into this country, that's making America great again, whether you agree with Mr. Trump or not. As Dave Petzo predicted many, many times, that this would happen, the repatriation of money. And these folks, whether it's Frank Vandersloot, whether it's Apple, whether it's Home Depot, giving people more money that they've earned. So with all due respect to other folks, because if I moved to some of these countries, they wouldn't really give me a rip. We have to take care of our own people, and there's nothing wrong with saying America first. Right? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And we continue on. Dwight in Boise on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. Kevin, what I'd like to say is something that I've been wanting to say for weeks and months and years, and I haven't had the courage. Our country's not going to be saved by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is one man. We are the missing link. We have to get out on the streets. We have to do more than vote. We have to do more than call talk radio. We have to get out on the streets and demand that the illegals be deported. Deported now. Demand that the Muslims be deported. And as a joke, we should demand that the liberals get deported. We need to demand that the FBI criminals are under investigation by grand juries and are under indictment if they're guilty. We need to demand that the liberal media be under investigation. We have got to stand up. What's wrong with our country is ultimately our fault as conservatives who have sat and wanted politicians to fix it. Politicians are not the solution. We are the solution. Politicians are not leaders. They are bribe takers from special interests. We are the leaders. We need to lead the politicians, and we need to back up Donald Trump. God bless him. He is the bravest guy that has ever been in politics in America, but he's just one guy. He deserves us standing up for him, being behind him, and being in front of him.
Well, Dwight, you have the audience. What do you want him to do?
Anybody that wants to do this, my name is Dwight Calloway at yahoo.com. Send me an email. If anybody gets this, if anybody knows it, already knows it, before I ever said a word, if you don't get it yet, then you need to think about it more. Please contact me. What I am in favor of is the Tea Party relaunching itself. The Tea Party is dead. It was killed by boring itself to death. And I'm talking to Bob, and I'm talking to Russ, and I'm talking to all the people that used to have control or had control of the Tea Party. The Tea Party started out with 3,000 people. The next meeting was 500. And after that, it was about 100. That is called boring yourself to death. Rallies are not action. You need to be in action week in and week out on the issue that the individual cares about. I care about a few issues. Everybody should be in action as a citizen in America. Conservatives should be doing that. We are getting beaten by people who are not even real Americans. I'm talking about liberals. And we're getting beaten by those people because they work and they fight, and we complain and whine and talk about politicians. It's not about politicians. It's about us. So Dwight Calloway at yahoo.com for starters. Let's start having meetings. Let's plan action. Let's put everybody to work on any issue that is ethical, that is worthwhile, and not do what the Tea Party did, which was to limit action to 3 issues, and I don't think they ever did any action on any of them. The people that stood up for the Tea Party was the right move, but we didn't do anything. We didn't do enough. People need to make a commitment to saving their country so that they can look their children in the face someday and not have to admit they let America be destroyed.
Dwight, call in any time, and we'll continue to get your word out.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Traffic and weather. Back to the phones. Tom in Nampa on KIDO Talk Radio.
Well, good morning, Kevin. I wasn't going to call, but that last caller kind of spurred me to respond. I think he's an excellent example of what he said of what's wrong with the Tea Party. It's too extreme. This is a free country. You can speak and say what you want, which just gives him the ability to say what he wants. So when you start wanting to deport people just because they think different, I'm not what you call it, a liberal, but some things I am. And so I don't know why he just wants a state in which everybody thinks like him, and they do that in fascist countries. So I just don't think that's the answer. As far as illegal aliens, I do think we need to have a tighter immigration policy, and the more Trump can work toward that, I think the better. But what I find kind of interesting is that I was checking the statistics, and Canyon County is about 25% for Hispanic, and I'm sure, do we have an immigration problem here, or are these people all working? Because they seem to be mixing well in society here, and the vote is very conservative here in Canyon County. Trump carried it by about 3-1, so either these people aren't voting or they are more conservative? I don't know. Do you have an answer to that?
I don't.
Because there's actually more Hispanics in this county than there was in the one I left in California. That was Shasta County, that was up in the northern part of the state. And I just found it kind of interesting. I live in a subdivision here that is right along Moss Lane. On the other side of the street, there's several trailer parks, and they're mostly Hispanic. And when I came around and trick-or-treated, I got mostly Hispanic kids, and I found that they were the ones that said thank you, and some of the other kids didn't bother to say thank you when I gave candy, so they were very polite. And I think most of these people are working, and I see them all over the place. So I don't know. I would think Idaho would be a little stricter enforcing immigration. California doesn't give a darn. But there's some reason they move up here, and it must be because there's a lot of work. And so I would hope these are working people. And anyway, that's about all I got to say. You know, sometimes when people just go way overboard like he did, I think it's a little too much. And that's why the Tea Party is losing favor with so many people. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Quickly to Caden, who will bring us home on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Caden.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, you've got 20 seconds, brother. They're all yours.
All right, cool. I just want to get this message out to Dwight. Tell him I like everything he said. Have him give me an email at Caden, that's CAYDENTW 2580 @gmail.com.